Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad Kuttan.
You're watching Consider This, the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. As of Friday, the 12th of March, Sarawak, with the fourth biggest population in the country, has inoculated about 1% of its residents. Now, the other top three states that have inoculated its residents is Putrajaya, Labuan, and Perlis, which are the three smaller states and territories in Malaysia. So, Sarawak has administered, I think, more than 28,000 first doses. That's the most in the country. We are delighted to speak today to Dr. Chin Zin Hing, Director of the Sarawak Health Department, to learn more about the vaccine rollout within the territory. Dr. Chin, good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the show today. Now, Sarawak, as I understand it, is about to start the second phase of its vaccination program, hopefully in April. Now, this is going to be a far bigger and way more complex process than the first phase that could involve vaccinating more than 2 million Sarawakians and migrants. But before we move into looking at the second phase, Dr. Chin, can we take a quick look back at the first phase of the vaccination rollout? I'm curious to know, in the time that you've seen the processes and operations, what have been some of the lessons that you will learn from the first phase moving into the second?
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, I think we have started the phase one, in fact, quite smoothly. But we did a lot of preparations for the phase one. In fact, we have presented the rollout plan to the state cabinet, and also we have presented the rollout plan to our state disaster management committee, and we received a lot of comment and all those things. One of our biggest issue is actually logistics. As you know, Sarawak is very big, and we have 12 divisions, 40 districts. With a lot of population actually is in very rural areas. So for us to roll out this plan, I mean, for phase two and phase three, it would be a big challenge for us. For the phase one, we only focus on the frontliners, which is actually relatively easier. Anyway, for this division, each division, they have their division disaster management committee. They also took charge to plan and so coordinate all the planning and coordinations for this rollout plan at the division level. So I think with the help from this committee, together with other agencies, we managed to roll out this first phase quite smoothly for the time being. But we know the bigger challenge will be the phase two and phase three.
Dr. Chin, if you could help us understand to what extent the Sarawakian plan is aligned to the federal, sense of priorities versus the local contingencies or exigencies rather, and the specific needs of the territory. How do those two dimensions work together?
Yeah, in fact, if we follow the federal plan initially, we're supposed to complete the whole exercise by, say, February next year. But for us in Sarawak, we because of the engagement with the state government, also with the state disaster management committee, we all feel that we need to push this forward. In fact, we plan to complete this by August. That means for the phase one, we will complete within this March and April. And then for the phase two, we are planning to do within 5 months, all right, from April, starting from April. And the phase three also, we will also start earlier so that we can complete by August. This is because I think we know of the logistic issue and so on. Our intention to push it forward is that so that we can plan, and then eventually, if there's any fallback, and we will not be falling back. Yeah.
I mean, this is an ambitious plan. The the target to finish or to complete the vaccine rollout within Sarawak, that's 5 months earlier than the national target, right? So if you're going to target August, that's really ambitious. I'm quite curious to know, are you concerned about the supply of vaccine? Because again, meeting that August deadline would very much be dependent on how many vaccine doses you can get into the territory.
Yeah, that is the conditions. I mean, all our plan was with the condition that we get the supply of the vaccine. Anyway, for the Sarawak state government, they also contemplating to actually, in case the supply from the federal is not forthcoming for the subsequent phases, then there is a contingency plan to hopefully we can procure for the state. I think all this will be in the planning state, and we have actually the state government set up a Sarawak Vaccine Advisory Group to advise the state government on these vaccines issues.
Dr. Chin, does the state government and the planners and people like yourself have a preference in terms of the scenarios going forward? Would you prefer that everything go through federal? Are you happy, as Selangor seems to be, to go at it at least in part alone, reaching out to pharmaceutical companies and then making also slightly different choices about who they give the vaccines to? So for instance, I think in Selangor, they're very interested in protecting industry, and so giving priority to factories and factory workers seems to be something that it's foremost in their minds. What about Sarawak?
Yeah, for us, I think as long as the supply of vaccine from the federal is actually on schedule, I mean, according to what we request, then probably we would be following what the federal, I mean, the supply, the vaccine that is being supplied. In case that is not forthcoming, then, I mean, Sarawak is planning and contingency plan in case to probably procure the vaccine separately for that. So we are actually monitoring this very closely. I mean, the State Disaster Management Committee is monitoring this very closely to see what the next step need to be done. So all this is been, I mean, we actually monitoring the situations. Yeah.
Right. So if I understand correctly, Dr. Chin, so far Sarawak has received, I believe, 2 shipments of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine. That's close to 60,000 doses. And you're looking to roll this out, but the Pfizer vaccine requires cold storage, doesn't it? -70 degrees Celsius. How are we looking at how are you looking at the logistics of that rollout for the second phase? Again, taking into account Sarawak's geographical diverse location.
In fact, we have, for this Pfizer vaccine, we have set up 7 vaccine storage center. All right, in out of the 12 division, we have set up 7 center. So the vaccine, when they arrive, will be stored at this vaccine storage center, and then from this center, they will be distributed to all the. For phase 1, we have 53 vaccination center throughout the state. So far for this phase 1, on the shipment that we have received so far, I think all this has been working quite well. So there's no issue on the, I mean, we managed to maintain the cold chain throughout. So I think for phase 1 so far, we are actually we have done this quite well, right?
Dr. Chin, are you, as some people in the peninsula, are concerned about vaccine hesitancy? What is the level of public confidence in Sarawak about the immunization program as a whole, about specific vaccines, and how much are the platforms available for people to register working for the Sarawakian population?
Yeah. For us, we did some initial survey among the frontliner that we are going to vaccinate. Apparently, the very first survey we did, about a quarter of them actually haven't made up their mind. But so far, after we roll out the vaccinations, in fact, the response from all the frontliner has been very good. So I think about the frontliner, we have not much of worry. We have not done a very specific survey among the general public and all those things. But we think so far, now with what we have done so far, I think most people are quite sort of they are quite okay with the Pfizer vaccine that we are given. So in fact, we have received a lot of response. I mean, a lot of requests to be put them in the earlier phase and so on. So I think for Pfizer, we don't have any issue at this moment. All right.
Okay. All right. So you said no issue with Pfizer. Are you anticipating issues with other types of vaccines in terms of confidence?
That might, because I think people will look at the efficacy and all those things, which also I mentioned about our Sarawak vaccinations advisory group also looking at all those things. So because we need to convince the public on all those things, so I think we will need a lot of report data on the other vaccines to make sure that we can convince, because we are going to be the one who are going to administer to the public. So we need to be convinced ourselves or others that we are going to be used. So I think that is important for us to do that.
Dr. Chin, in the peninsula, we have an issue around undocumented workers. So these are the foreign worker population that's not captured by any database at the moment. And the government seems to have made the decision to provide them vaccines free of charge. And I think also to opt perhaps for a single dose vaccine when that is available. Dr. Chin, what is it about the Sarawak context that we need to understand, especially with those 1,000-kilometer long border that you have with Kalimantan? How does it complicate matters for the immunization program there?
Yeah. At present is estimated there's about 200 plus foreign workers in Sarawak. So for these 200 workers, we're going to include them in the phase 3 vaccinations.
Sorry, that's 200,000?
200,000.
200,000.
All right. So the Sarawak government actually is planning also to take in additional foreign workers. In fact, they are going to they come up with mechanism to regulate all those things so that these people, when they come in, they will be having proper quarantine and so on. So I think at present, all these 200,000 that we have, I think they will be, be put into the vaccinations in the phase 3.
Right. And you mentioned, going into phase 2, you trying to inoculate more than 2 million Sarawakians and foreign workers. Do you have enough healthcare workers to administer those shots in the arms, Dr. Chin? How is the healthcare capacity within the territory?
Yeah, we have all these vaccination centers set up in our health facility clinics, and also we're going to set up mass vaccination centers during the phase 2 and phase 3. The people getting vaccinations mainly from our healthcare workers, probably some from the private, but there will be a lot of other people included, to do those non-technical, non-medical duties such as registration, some of the crowd control, documentations, and so on. So as I mentioned earlier, the Divisional Disaster Management Committee has planned and coordinated all this manpower and also the logistic issue. So from the first phase that we roll out, we actually have got the assistance from the other agencies and so on, the manpower issue. So I think for phase 2 and phase 3, we are confident that such a cooperation going to be given, and we should be able to roll out the phase 2 and phase 3 with their cooperations. Yeah.
Dr. Chin, the question of monitoring the immunization program, could you help us understand some of the elements in that, including perhaps the need to look at booster shots on an annual basis? Is this something that will mean that the immunization program that's put in place today will have to serve the territory for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, I think that is a bit in the future, because we are still in the earlier phase of this immunization. I think a lot of data or a lot of things we need to know, understand from other country or the data before that. I think this is going to be a national decision. I think not in my level to comment on this. But there's a possibility. There's a possibility that it could be an annual vaccination program. This
Okay.
is not really,
That's something we'll come back to perhaps once we've gotten past this first round of the vaccination rollout. Dr. Chin, if I may come back to the different types of vaccines, and as I mentioned earlier, the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine requires cold chain storage, also the Moderna vaccine, if I'm not mistaken. But I believe Minister Kari Jamaluddin has mentioned that for rural Malaysians, they would most likely be receiving the AstraZeneca vaccine, and that will be perhaps in the second quarter of 2021. How is Sarawak looking at this, given that the rural areas of Sarawak, I think more than a third of the population continue to live beyond 5 kilometers of any healthcare facilities? Are you thinking about AstraZeneca vaccine for rural Sarawak? How is that going to fit into the timeline of Sarawak trying to complete its vaccination program within August?
Yeah, I think we do have some discussion going on. Maybe for the rural Sarawak, the most remote one, a more remote one, we are thinking we also try to compress this phase 2 and phase 3 together. That means when we go there, we will one go cover the phase 2 and phase 3, the high risk group, those above 60 and those above 16, though without any comorbid, so that we don't have to go there too many times. And also we have actually discussions. We think if there is availability of single dose vaccine, that would be something good, because we don't have to, otherwise we have to make at least 2 trips to that place to give the first dose and so the second dose. But if you can cover in just 1 trip, I think that will help us to overcome a lot of these logistic challenges.
Dr. Chin, in many countries with the immunization program, far advanced, like Israel, Chile, the United Arab Emirates, it's seemed to be done in tandem with a plan to open up borders, considering that Sarawak itself it has control over its own immigration. Do you have a sense of how this timeline fits in with the general opening up of Sarawak, especially to tourists and business travelers, and so that level of a return to a normal?
Yeah, I think that will depend quite a lot also on the federal, because I think it has been discussed. My minister has earlier mentions about the vaccination passport or those things. Mm-hmm. So we will see how things goes. I think we won't be too far from what the federal decision, because I think we need to open up also even when the times come. Yeah.
Yes. Understood. Dr. Chin, in the last couple of minutes that we have left, I wanted to ask you, so again, you've had the first phase, inoculating the healthcare workers, the frontliners, moving now into the second phase, which is going to be far more complex. What, beyond the logistics, what are you most concerned about in terms of what could go wrong? Because I know that healthcare professionals around the country are working very hard to make sure that no vaccine doses go to waste, to make sure that we take every opportunity to make sure that the rollout happens most efficiently. So what are you most concerned about keeping a close eye on in the next phase?
Yeah, I think the first thing we need to look at is actually the registrations of the potential, those eligible, right? I think in Sarawak, probably a lot of the rural area might not have that many people with access, to the smartphone, and also even if they have one, the line may not be good or those things. So the registration through MySejahtera, we were promoted. I think in the urban area, probably not that much an issue, but the rural area, I think it can be a challenge. But for our state disaster committee, actually management committee, had decided actually engage all the district office and also all the community leaders, to help to do get the manual registration for allow these rural people. So far, I think the response has been quite encouraging. So we continue to do that to make sure that enough, all the eligible the population has been registered. I think that will be the first step. Once that is, I think we will have to work out when it will be the vaccinations, the schedules, and all those things, how to get the people to the place where we're going to. In fact, we have set up quite a lot of the vaccination center in our rural clinics. So we might also do some outreach to cover certain areas and so on. So that is in our plan. In fact, all the divisions has been asked to do their own plan, because Sarawak, even the different division, their logistic issue varies. Yeah.
Yes. Dr. Chin, you've received your vaccine dose, I take it?
I got it.
Yes. How was it? Any adverse effects or immediate adverse effects for your vaccine jab?
Not so much, but it just you feel a bit of soreness for a couple of days, but after that it was okay. So, but
All right.
I'm expecting the next dose in a few days.
Okay. All right. Well, good to hear that you've had your dose. Thank you so much for speaking with us today. We really do appreciate your time, Dr. Chin, and the work that you're doing in Sarawak. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all we have for you on this episode of Consider This. Don't forget to get the latest news and information on COVID-19 vaccines at astroawani.com and the Astro Awani app. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Melisa Idris.
And I'm Sharaad, Kuttan, signing off for the evening.
We will be back with you same time tomorrow. Good night.
Good night.